My father told me I'd fail at everything I ever tried because I didn't have what it takes, and I should give everything to my golden brother because he has what it takes. I tried anyway and succeeded despite him. Now he begs me to give my brother a job at my company. So my dad spent my entire childhood telling me I was going to fail at life. Not in a concerned parent way where they're worried about you. No, this was the full-on convinced, written in stone prophecy kind of certainty. He'd look at me doing homework or practicing for sports and just shake his head like he was watching someone try to teach a goldfish calculus. Meanwhile, my younger brother Logan could literally fart, and my dad would applaud his entrepreneurial spirit. I wish I was exaggerating. Let me paint you a picture of how ridiculous the favoritism was in my house growing up. I'm talking about levels of golden child worship that would make the most biased parent look fair and balanced. Every single thing I did got scrutinized and criticized, while Logan could mess up catastrophically and still get praise for trying his best. I was 12 when I built my first computer from parts I saved up for by mowing lawns all summer. Took me 3 months of work, research, watching YouTube tutorials, the whole deal. When I finally got it running, my dad walked into my room, looked at it, and said it was a waste of time because I'd never make anything of myself with computers anyway. That same week, Logan brought home a C- on a spelling test and got taken out for ice cream because he really applied himself this time. The kid spelled because as because and got ice cream. I built a functioning computer from scratch and got told I was wasting my time. This pattern continued through my entire childhood and teenage years. When I made the varsity basketball team as a sophomore, my dad told me sports were a distraction and I should focus on more realistic goals. When Logan quit the JV team after 2 practices because it was too hard, my dad praised him for knowing his limits and not overextending himself. When I got a 3.9 GPA my junior year while working 20 hours a week at a local restaurant, my dad said grades didn't matter because I didn't have the personality to succeed anyway. When Logan barely scraped by with a 2.3 and 0 job experience, my dad said grades weren't everything and that Logan had natural charisma that would take him far in life. The double standards reached absurd levels. I saved up money from my restaurant job to buy a used Honda Civic when I turned 17. Paid for it myself, handled the insurance myself, did basic maintenance myself. My dad's reaction was to tell me I'd probably run it into the ground within a year because I didn't know how to take care of things. Logan turned 17 and my dad bought him a newer car. Not new, but a solid used Toyota that cost 3 times what I paid for my Civic. When I pointed out the unfairness, my dad said Logan needed reliable transportation for his future career. I apparently didn't need reliable transportation despite working and going to school. Birthday celebrations were another joke. My birthdays got acknowledged with a card and maybe a small gift card to somewhere generic. Logan's birthdays were events. Full family dinners at nice restaurants, multiple presents, the whole production. One year my dad spent almost $600 on Logan's birthday celebration. That same year, I got a $50 bill and a card and a handshake. When I joined the school's robotics team and we won a regional competition, my dad couldn't even be bothered to show up to the awards ceremony. Too busy with work, he said. When Logan participated in a debate tournament and lost in the first round, my dad took the day off work to watch and then took Logan out for a consolation dinner at his favorite steakhouse because he was so proud of Logan for getting up there and trying. The message was crystal clear from every interaction. I could achieve anything and it wouldn't matter. Logan could fail at everything and he'd still be the favorite. It wasn't about what we did. It was about who we were in my dad's eyes. And in his eyes, Logan was destined for greatness, while I was destined to be mediocre at best. The natural charisma my dad kept talking about was basically Logan being able to talk his way out of consequences. The kid could charm his way out of a speeding ticket, a failed assignment, or pretty much any responsibility. And my dad ate it up like it was some kind of superpower instead of just being a good liar. Here's what really killed me though. When I was 16, I started a small lawn care business. I bought a used mower with money I'd saved, printed flyers at the library, and went door to door in our neighborhood. Within 2 months, I had 15 regular clients and was making decent money for a teenager. I was incredibly proud. Finally did something my dad couldn't criticize, right? Wrong. My dad sat me down one evening and told me I needed to shut down my business and give my client list to Logan. Not ask Logan if he wanted to partner up. Not suggest we work together. Give him my entire business. His reasoning? Logan had the right personality for running a business, and I was just doing grunt work anyway. He said I should focus on getting a regular job somewhere, because entrepreneurship wasn't in my DNA. But Logan was a natural-born leader who needed the opportunity to shine. I was 16 years old, had built something from nothing, and my own father wanted me to hand it over to my 14-year-old brother, who had never shown interest in working a single day in his life. When I refused, my dad grounded me for being selfish and not supporting my family. Grounded. For not giving away my own business that I built. That was the moment I realized my dad wasn't just playing favorites. He genuinely believed Logan was better than me. It wasn't even about what we did or accomplished. In his mind, Logan was inherently superior and destined for greatness, while I was inherently inferior and destined to fail. Nothing I could do would ever change that perception. My mom wasn't much better. She just went along with whatever my dad said. If he said the sky was green, she'd nod and ask what shade of green. She never stood up for me, never questioned the obvious favoritism, never even acknowledged that maybe, just maybe, treating your kids completely differently might mess them up. Her philosophy was, your father knows best, even when his best was objectively wrong and borderline abusive. College application time was another nightmare. I had worked incredibly hard to maintain my grades while working and running my business. I had good SAT scores, solid extracurriculars, recommendation letters from teachers who actually respected me. I applied to several state schools and got accepted to all of them with partial scholarships. My dad's response? He told me I was wasting my time with college because I'd probably flunk out anyway. And even if I didn't, I'd never amount to anything because I lacked ambition and drive. This man looked at my report cards, my work history, my business, and somehow concluded I lacked ambition and drive. The mental gymnastics required for that conclusion could win Olympic gold. Then Logan started his senior year, and suddenly college was the most important thing in the world. My dad started talking about which schools Logan should apply to, how they'd make it work financially, how proud he was of Logan for wanting to pursue higher education. Logan, who had never expressed any interest in college before, and was barely pulling a 2.5 GPA. Here's where it gets even better. My dad told me I needed to take out student loans for my education because they couldn't afford to help me. Fair enough. Money's tight, I get it. Except 3 weeks later, my dad sat us both down and announced he'd been saving money in an education fund. For Logan, he had literally been putting money aside for years, specifically for Logan's college education, while telling me we couldn't afford to help with mine. The amount? Almost $40,000. $40,000 that he'd been secretly saving for the golden child while I worked multiple jobs and took out loans. When I pointed out how messed up that was, my dad said he'd made the investment in Logan because Logan had a better chance of making something of himself and bringing success to the family name. I was a lost cause who would waste any money they gave me. I moved out 2 weeks later, took my loans, my scholarships, my business profits, and got a tiny apartment near campus. My dad's parting words were that I'd be back within a semester, begging for help, proving him right about my inability to make it on my own. I told him I'd rather live in my car than ask him for a single thing ever again. College was brutal, but in a good way. I worked 30 hours a week, took a full course load, and somehow managed to keep my grades up. I had exactly zero social life. No parties, no spring breaks, no fraternity nonsense. Just work, class, study, sleep, repeat. My roommate used to joke that I was like a robot programmed for productivity. My typical day started at 5 in the morning. I'd study until 7, go to my first class, attend lectures until 1 in the afternoon, then head to my job at a local accounting firm, where I did data entry and basic bookkeeping, work until 9 at night, come home, eat something quick, study until midnight, sleep for 5 hours, repeat. Weekends were for catching up on assignments and picking up extra shifts when I could. During my sophomore year, I started freelancing on the side. Web design, database management, anything I could do remotely with flexible hours. It wasn't much at first, just enough to cover groceries and gas. But I learned a lot and built up a portfolio of clients who actually valued my work. I taught myself SQL, Python, and database optimization through free online resources and library books. Spent countless nights working through tutorials and building practice projects. My first freelance client was a small medical office that needed their patient database reorganized. I charged them $800 for something that took me about 20 hours. They were thrilled with the results and referred me to 3 other practices. By junior year, I was making almost as much from freelancing as I was from my regular job. The freelancing was also way more interesting and taught me actual marketable skills instead of just mindless data entry. I started thinking seriously about what it would take to do this full-time after graduation. Meanwhile, Logan started college at a fancy private school that cost 3 times what my state school did. My dad was so proud, posted pictures all over Facebook of Logan on campus, Logan at orientation, Logan in his dorm. The whole 9 yards of embarrassing parent behavior. I wasn't even mentioned in the family updates. It was like I didn't exist. The few times I did talk to my parents during college, the conversations followed the same pattern. My dad would ask how school was. I'd say fine. He'd grunt with apparent disinterest, then launch into a 20-minute speech about how well Logan was doing and all the amazing opportunities he was pursuing. Never mind that I was working myself half to death while maintaining good grades. Logan taking a full course load of easy electives was apparently more impressive than my engineering coursework combined with full-time employment. Logan lasted exactly 1 year before getting kicked out for academic dishonesty. Turns out his natural charisma didn't extend to actually doing his own work. He'd been paying other students to write his papers, and got caught when he submitted one that had someone else's name still in the file properties. $40,000 down the drain for 1 year of plagiarism and failing grades. My dad's response? Boys will be boys. Everyone makes mistakes. Logan just needed to find the right path. He framed it like Logan was some kind of misunderstood genius who just hadn't found his calling yet. Zero accountability for the fact that Logan had cheated, lied, and wasted enough money to buy a new car. Logan moved back home and started what my dad called his entrepreneurial phase. In reality, it was a series of failed business ideas that my dad funded while Logan did minimal actual work. First, it was a clothing line. My dad gave him $15,000 to get started. Logan designed exactly 3 shirts, sold maybe 20 of them to friends and family, then lost interest when he realized running a business required consistent effort. The clothing line was supposed to be streetwear targeted at college students. Logan made a bunch of grand plans about partnering with influencers and getting into retail stores. He spent most of the money on a professional photo shoot for the 3 designs he made, bought expensive branding consultation that he didn't follow through on, and blew the rest on sample inventory that sat in boxes in my parents' garage for years. When the business inevitably failed, my dad blamed the saturated market and bad timing instead of Logan's complete lack of effort. Next was a social media management company. My dad bought him a new laptop, paid for online courses, even helped him set up an LLC. Logan made an Instagram account for the business, posted twice, then forgot about it. The LLC dissolved after a year of inactivity. This one was even more pathetic because Logan actually landed 2 small business clients through family connections. A friend of my dad's who owned a local restaurant, and my mom's cousin who ran a boutique. Both were willing to pay Logan to manage their social media. Logan posted for them maybe 3 times total, then stopped responding to their messages. My dad had to apologize to both of them and return their deposits. Logan's excuse was that social media management was too restrictive for his creative vision. Then it was a food truck. This one my dad really invested in. Dropped $30,000 on a used truck and equipment. Logan was going to sell gourmet grilled cheese sandwiches. He operated for exactly 2 weeks before deciding it was too much work getting up early and dealing with permits and food safety regulations. The truck sat in my parents' driveway for a year before they sold it at a huge loss. The food truck phase actually overlapped with me starting my company, which made the contrast even more obvious. Logan would wake up at 11, make some grilled cheese sandwiches around noon, park the truck at the same spot downtown for a couple hours, then go home by 3. He complained constantly about how hard it was and how demanding customers were. Meanwhile, I was working 14-hour days, building my client base and developing systems to scale my business. But according to my dad, we were both entrepreneurs working hard to make our dreams reality. After the food truck failure, Logan announced he was going to become a day trader. My dad gave him $10,000 to invest. Logan took 1 online course, bought access to some trading platform, and proceeded to lose $8,000 of it within 3 months through incredibly stupid trades. He'd follow random tips from Reddit forums and YouTube videos, make impulsive decisions based on nothing but gut feeling, and then act surprised when he lost money. The remaining $2,000 he withdrew and spent on clothes and eating out. Every single failure was met with encouragement and more money. Logan wasn't a serial failure with no follow-through. No, he was a passionate entrepreneur exploring different ventures until he found the right fit. My dad kept telling anyone who would listen that Logan had the mind of a true businessman and just needed to find his niche. During this time, I graduated college with honors, landed a job as a database administrator for a logistics company, making decent money. Within 3 years, I'd worked my way up to senior analyst. I was good at what I did, and I was finally making enough to live comfortably and pay down my student loans aggressively. But I had bigger plans. I'd been freelancing the entire time, building relationships with clients, learning what businesses actually needed. I saw a gap in the market for mid-sized companies that needed database optimization and automation, but couldn't afford the big consulting firms. At 27, I quit my job and started my own consulting company. Used my savings to float myself for 6 months while I built up my client base. It was incredibly risky. I had sleepless nights wondering if I'd made a massive mistake. But I hustled. I networked. I delivered exceptional work and let my results speak for themselves. Those first 6 months were terrifying. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning panicking about making rent, wondering if I should just give up and find another regular job. Every day I didn't land a new client felt like confirmation that maybe my dad was right all along. But I pushed through it. Cold called businesses, attended every networking event I could find, undercharged for my first few projects just to build a reputation. My first major client was a regional logistics company that was struggling with their warehouse management database. Their system was a mess of redundant entries, outdated information, and zero automation. I spent 2 months completely rebuilding their database structure, implementing automation for routine tasks, and training their staff. Cut their processing time by 40% and reduced errors by even more. They were so impressed they referred me to 4 other companies in their industry. Year 1, I made $70,000 in revenue and paid myself about $40,000 after expenses. Barely more than my old job, but I was my own boss. Year 2, I hit $150,000. Hired my first employee, a recent graduate named Alex, who reminded me of myself at that age. Hardworking, eager to learn, willing to put in the hours. Year 3, I broke $300,000 and brought on 2 more people. By year 5, I was running a team of 12 with annual revenue over $2 million. The growth wasn't smooth or easy. Had plenty of setbacks along the way. Lost a major client in year 3 when they got acquired, and the new parent company used their own systems. Had an employee steal client data and try to start a competing business in year 4. Dealt with cash flow problems more than once when clients paid late while I still had to make payroll. But I figured it out each time. Found new clients to replace the ones I lost. Implemented better security protocols after the data theft. Set up a line of credit to handle cash flow gaps. Each problem made the business stronger and taught me something valuable about running a company. I was 32 years old running a successful business that I'd built from scratch with zero help from my family. Actually, less than zero help. I built it despite my family actively telling me I'd fail. And you know what? That made it so much sweeter. By this point, I'd moved into a nice apartment in a good part of town, drove a reliable newer car that I paid cash for, had a healthy retirement account growing, and was living comfortably without debt except the mortgage on a small rental property I'd bought as an investment. Everything my dad said I'd never achieve, I'd achieved. Everything he said I couldn't do, I'd done. My dad knew vaguely that I had my own business. I'd mentioned it once or twice during the obligatory holiday phone calls. His response was always the same dismissive grunt and subject change. He never asked questions, never showed interest, never acknowledged it as a real achievement. In his mind, I was probably running some tiny operation out of my apartment, barely scraping by. Meanwhile, Logan had moved on to his latest venture, a podcast. Because apparently everyone and their dog needs a podcast now. My dad bought him all the equipment, paid for hosting, even hired someone to teach Logan how to edit audio. Logan recorded 6 episodes total over 4 months, got maybe 100 downloads combined, then abandoned it when he realized building an audience required consistency and actual content worth listening to. I hadn't seen my family in person in almost 4 years. We did the obligatory phone calls on major holidays where conversations were surface level and uncomfortable. My dad would ask how work was. I'd say fine, he'd grunt, then spend 20 minutes telling me about Logan's latest genius idea. I'd listen, say nothing, and count down the minutes until I could hang up. Last Thanksgiving, I was actually grateful for food poisoning because it gave me a legitimate excuse to skip the family dinner. That's how much I dreaded seeing them. I'd rather spend the holiday vomiting than sit at a table with people who thought so little of me. 3 months ago, everything changed. I was in my office reviewing quarterly numbers when my assistant told me I had a visitor who claimed to be my father. I actually thought she was joking at first. My father showing up unannounced at my office made 0 sense. But sure enough, there he was in the lobby, looking older than I remembered, wearing slacks and a button-down like he was attending a job interview. He seemed surprised when my assistant led him through the main work area where my team was busy at their stations. I could see him looking around, taking in the office space, the equipment, the employees. We went into my private office. I didn't offer him a seat or any pleasantries, just stood there waiting for him to explain why he was here. The silence stretched out uncomfortably until finally he cleared his throat and said he wanted to talk to me about an opportunity. An opportunity. Right. He started with small talk, asking how business was going. I gave him one-word answers. Good. Fine. Busy. He commented on the nice office space. Said it looked like things were going well for me. I didn't respond. Just waited for him to get to the real reason he was here. Turns out, Logan's latest venture had crashed and burned spectacularly. He'd convinced my dad to co-sign on a loan for $45,000 to start a dropshipping business. You know, that thing that was already oversaturated and basically a scam by the time Logan decided to get into it. He'd spent the money on inventory that never sold, on ads that never converted, on a course taught by some guru who promised easy money. My dad explained all this like it was a tragic accident beyond anyone's control. The market was too competitive. Logan got bad advice from his mentor. The timing was unlucky. The inventory suppliers weren't reliable. On and on with excuses for why it failed, never once mentioning that Logan had no business plan, no market research, and no work ethic. The business folded within 8 months. Logan defaulted on the loan. Now my dad was on the hook for $45,000 plus interest that he couldn't afford. He'd already refinanced his house once to cover previous investments in Logan's failed ventures. He couldn't do it again. My dad sat in my office and told me this whole sob story about how Logan had tried so hard, but the market was just too competitive. How Logan was discouraged and struggling. How they needed help getting back on their feet. Then came the real reason for the visit. He wanted me to give Logan a job at my company. Not just any job. A management position. Because Logan had so much business experience from running his various ventures and could really contribute to the growth of my company. I actually laughed out loud. Couldn't help it. The audacity was breathtaking. "You're joking," I said. He looked genuinely confused. Why would I be joking? Logan has experience running businesses. He understands entrepreneurship. He could be a real asset to your team. Logan has experience failing at businesses, I corrected. That's not the same thing. My dad's face darkened. He's learned from those experiences. That makes him valuable. He knows what not to do. So do I replied. I know not to hire people who quit when things get difficult. I know not to hire people who've never successfully completed a single project. I know not to hire people just because they're related to me. He tried a different approach. Talked about how family businesses are stronger because of the trust and loyalty involved. How Logan would be committed to the company's success because it would be family success. How this could be an opportunity for us to rebuild our relationship while also helping Logan get back on his feet. The whole pitch was clearly rehearsed. He'd probably practiced it on the drive over, but it was full of holes. What trust? What loyalty? We didn't have any family relationship to rebuild because we never had a real one to begin with. My dad looked offended. He said family should help family, that I had resources now and Logan needed opportunity, that it was the right thing to do. He actually used those words. The right thing to do. Like giving Logan a management job he wasn't qualified for at a company he'd played no role in building was some kind of moral obligation. I asked my dad if he remembered telling me I'd fail at everything I tried. If he remembered saying I didn't have what it takes. If he remembered making me give my lawn care business to Logan, because Logan was the natural-born leader. If he remembered the $40,000 he saved for Logan's education while I took out loans. If he remembered any of the years of being told I was the lesser son who would never amount to anything. His face went red. He said that was in the past, and I needed to stop living in it. That he'd always supported both his sons equally. That I was being petty and vindictive by bringing up old grievances. The sheer revision of history was stunning. In his mind, he'd been father of the year to both of us. I told him no. Simple as that. No, I wouldn't give Logan a job. No, I wouldn't bail them out. No, I wouldn't be providing any help whatsoever. My company was built on my own merit with my own effort, despite everything my family did to discourage me. Logan wasn't qualified to work here, and even if he was, I wouldn't hire him. My dad's whole demeanor changed. The fake friendly act dropped. He told me I was being selfish and cruel, that Logan was my brother and family sticks together, that I owed them after everything they'd done for me growing up. He actually said I owed them. For what? For telling me I'd fail? For favoring my brother in every possible way? For making me feel worthless my entire childhood? I asked him to leave. He refused. Started raising his voice about how I'd turned my back on family, how success had made me arrogant, how I'd regret this. I called security, watching 2 guys escort my own father out of my building, while he shouted about what an ungrateful son I was, might have been the most surreal moment of my life. He called me 17 times that day. I blocked his number. He showed up at my apartment building that evening. The doorman turned him away. He sent emails. I sent them to spam. He tried to reach me through LinkedIn of all places. I blocked him there too. Then Logan started trying. Text messages about how he really needed this opportunity, how he'd changed and grown, how he'd work hard and prove himself if I just gave him a chance, how he knew we'd had our differences growing up but we were adults now and could move past it. Every message was clearly crafted to push emotional buttons. I didn't respond to any of them, not a single one. What was there to say? No amount of carefully worded manipulation was going to change the fact that Logan had been handed every advantage while I got criticism and obstacles, and he still managed to fail at everything while I succeeded. My mom started calling, crying about how I was tearing the family apart. How could I be so heartless to my own brother who was struggling? Didn't I care about family? I reminded her that she'd stood by silently while my dad treated me like garbage for 18 years and funded Logan's every whim while I worked multiple jobs. She hung up on me. The harassment continued for 2 weeks. Different phone numbers, emails from accounts I hadn't blocked yet, even a handwritten letter delivered to my office. All variations of the same theme. Logan needed help. I had the power to help. Family helps family. I was being selfish. I owed them. On and on. I finally responded with a single email sent to all 3 of them. Kept it short and clear. I had no interest in rekindling any relationship with people who had spent decades making me feel worthless. Logan's failures were not my responsibility. Their financial problems were not my responsibility. I wished them the best, but wanted no further contact. Any additional attempts to reach me would be considered harassment and handled accordingly. The email seemed to work. The messages stopped. I thought maybe they'd finally gotten the picture and would leave me alone. Should have known better. 2 months later, Logan showed up at my office. Just walked right in during business hours. My assistant tried to stop him, but he pushed past her and barged into my office during a meeting with a client. Started this whole scene about how he needed to talk to me, how it was urgent, how I couldn't just ignore family. I excused myself from the meeting, walked Logan to the lobby, and told him in no uncertain terms that if he ever showed up at my office again, I'd have him arrested for trespassing. He tried to grab my arm, started crying about how desperate he was, how he had nowhere else to turn. I called security again. As they were escorting him out, he shouted that I'd regret this, that karma would catch up to me, that I'd end up alone and miserable. Pretty rich coming from a 30-year-old man who'd failed at everything he'd ever tried and was now begging his brother for a job at a company he'd played no role in building. I sent a formal cease and desist letter that afternoon. Had my attorney draft it, made it crystal clear that any further contact from any family member would result in legal action. The letter outlined every incident of attempted contact, characterized it as ongoing harassment, and gave them explicit notice to stop. That finally did it. Radio silence for 3 weeks. I actually started to relax, thinking maybe they'd finally gotten the message. Then I got a call from my attorney. My dad had hired a lawyer and was threatening to sue me. The grounds? Some nonsense about how I'd stolen business opportunities that rightfully belonged to Logan because I'd used skills I learned while working at a family business. Except we never had a family business. The whole thing was completely fabricated. My attorney was almost amused. He said it was one of the most baseless claims he'd ever seen and that we could easily get it dismissed. But the point wasn't to win a lawsuit. The point was to harass me, to cost me time and money, to try to force me back into contact with them. We filed a motion to dismiss and a countersuit for filing a frivolous lawsuit and ongoing harassment. My attorney was confident we'd win both. He was right. The judge threw out their case within 3 weeks and ruled in our favor on the countersuit, ordered them to pay my legal fees plus additional damages for the harassment. The amount wasn't huge by any means, but it sent a clear message. Keep messing with me, and it'll cost you more than just pride. My attorney sent them the judgment with a note that any future contact would result in immediate legal action with penalties. That was 2 months ago. Haven't heard from any of them since. No calls, no emails, no surprise visits. Just blessed silence. Part of me wonders if they've finally accepted that I'm done with them, that the bridge isn't just burned, it's been napalmed and the ashes scattered, that no amount of guilt trips or manipulation or legal threats is going to change my mind. But I know my family. They're probably just regrouping, trying to figure out a new angle. Maybe they'll try to reach out through extended family. Maybe they'll try to show up at a professional event. Maybe they'll find some other creative way to insert themselves back into my life. Doesn't matter. I'm prepared now. I have lawyers on retainer. I have documentation of everything. I have boundaries made of reinforced steel. They taught me growing up that I was worthless and would never succeed. They were wrong about that. They taught me that family always comes first no matter what. They were wrong about that too. The best revenge isn't proving them wrong, though I definitely did that. The best revenge is living well and not letting them be part of it. My dad spent my entire childhood telling me I'd fail. He invested everything in Logan because Logan had what it takes. Now, Logan's living at home at 30 with a string of failed businesses and defaulted loans while I'm running a successful company that I built from nothing. And they want me to fix their mistakes, to give Logan the opportunities I had to create for myself, to forget decades of being treated like I was less than, to pretend like none of it mattered because family. Here's what I want people to understand about situations like this. Cutting off toxic family isn't cruel. It's not heartless. It's not something you do lightly or because you're being petty. It's an act of self-preservation when dealing with people who have proven repeatedly that they don't value you, don't respect you, and will only take from you. My dad had 32 years to be a good father to me, 32 years to show some basic fairness and respect, 32 years to acknowledge my efforts and accomplishments. He chose to spend those years tearing me down while building Logan up. That was his choice. Now I'm making mine. Logan had 30 years to be a decent brother, to maybe stand up for me occasionally when the favoritism got really bad, to treat me like a person instead of the inferior sibling. He chose to take advantage of every benefit he got while I got nothing. That was his choice. Now I'm making mine. My mom had 32 years to be a mother to both her sons instead of just enabling my dad's favoritism. She chose silent complicity. That was her choice. Now I'm making mine. They made their choices based on what benefited them in the moment. I'm making mine based on what's healthy for my future. And my future doesn't include people who see me as a bank account to raid or a resource to exploit when their golden child inevitably fails. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.